Greetings, gardeners. It's January, midwinter in the northern hemisphere. Even here in Hawaii, it's January and midwinter. We're getting a lot of rain, and so I'm kind of being pushed indoors by the weather. 8 inches since the system started a couple of days ago. It doesn't seem to be letting up any. And so I'm indoors. I'm sure a whole lot of you in the northern latitudes are also spending as much time as possible inside a building this time of year. It could be frost forming on the window panes, you know, and all that stuff. And so this is the time of year where we plan for the garden. If you want to have a really good garden in 2008, the time to get going with the planning is somewhere between Christmas and February 1st. You really want to have most of your seeds in your hand, really, by at least mid-February for most of you, because some of the things that are going to require early starting, like peppers or eggplants, maybe onion seeds if you're growing sweet onions, you're going to want to get them in early. You have to use heater cables and grow lights, or a greenhouse, or heated cold frames, or a sunny southern picture window in your living room, something like that. If you're living up where it's snowy right now, and I guess they even had some snow down in Georgia and maybe even Florida Panhandle, I think. So even way down in Dixie, you guys may have had some snow recently. I'm sure it's gone by now. It's warming up again. Nevertheless, you'll need a place, and so in planning, if you're going to buy seeds to grow, and if some of the seeds are going to have to be started, well, it's a great time right now to do planning of how are we going to start the seeds, you know. And so, cheapest way, and I highly recommend it, is if you have a, crawl space, a basement, a closet you're not using much, or something like that, where it's, relatively warm, a moderated climate, because it's within the house walls. Just get yourself a heater mat or some plant heater cables specifically designed for plants. They sell them, find them on the web. And I would then also acquire some grow lights. Now, back in my day when we did this, I used to use fluorescent tubes, 4-foot fluorescent tubes, in a regular plain old industrial fixture. You just stick the plant lights in there. Use a plant light tube, kind of put on a fish tank and stuff like that. Those work fine. You can really grow some great stuff under one of them. They don't have a lot of lumens, okay, so you can't fruit something or flower most things under there, but it will allow plants to grow green and vegetatively. You can set up a couple sawhorses and a piece of old door in your basement with a heater cable on it and some lights over the top. I used to use pulleys with cords to raise and lower the fixtures as the plants grew. From there, they will need to go outside and be hardened off later on in spring, and so you're going to need some kind of outdoor shelter too. Cold frame, light greenhouses, unheated greenhouses, things like that, to get the transition from being down in your cellar with lights into actual true sunlight with weather. And so there's a bit of planning that has to go on, but probably even more important right now is if you're planning to grow a garden from seeds, you're going to be shopping for seeds. And before we even get going with that, first thing we want to do is pull out the seed collection that you may already have. I have numerous seed collections, all sorts myself. This is my home garden vegetable seed box. And here I've stored my seeds from the last time I used them in Ziploc bags inside a sealed plastic tub. I keep them in the cabinet of the kitchen where it's cool, dry, dark. And then I fill the bags with silicon dioxide desiccant. I also toss in any desiccant that comes in a vitamin bottle or anything else. Toss it in there with the seeds to help absorb the moisture. You want to absorb the moisture. Here in Hawaii, that's very important. We typically have like 60–70% humidity inside the house here. It's not unusual. And so seeds don't last long when they're humid. So you want to keep them cool, dark, dry. And some people freeze seeds. I don't recommend the practice because the temperature change causes condensation. So when you bring them out, water condenses all over them, and that's not very good. better they just be cool. For average storage of a seed's life, you don't need to use a freezer on them. Well, the other thing then connected to that in the seed collection is, how old are the seeds? Well, it's not the same for every seed. You know, like this bag here, it looks like, oh no, look at that. Oh, that's a picture of an onion. Oh, bummer. Onion seeds, they barely last from one garden to the next. A year is the longest that they usually hold up under ordinary storage conditions. These I bought late last year. I believe they're dated, yep, 2018 it says, so rather 2017. That was late last year. We'll find out whether they're still any good or not, but most likely I'm going to have to replace all my onion seed if I have any left around here. I think that's all there was. Next to it, oh, I see, oh, that's Toscana kale, the Italian kale. Now, that's not only freshly purchased, again, this last fall and winter, but the seed on cabbage crops, or kale and cole crops, they'll last for usually around 6-7 years. Okay, so 5 to 7 years, somewhere in there. And so you can keep cabbage seed around or kale seed around for a while if you keep it dry and cool. Next to it, what have I got? Oh, Mokum, the carrot. Sadly, carrot seed, about 1 year. That's it. Carrot seed has very, very short lifespan. So that's junk at this point. I got cabbage seeds back here. And cabbage is, again, like the kale, 5 to 7 years. It's good. That's soy seed was bought this last year. And a great big bag in the middle over there. That's the Hawaiian sweet corn, hybrid number 10. And I just bought that last fall. The seed is still good, but corn seed usually, I won't push it past 2 years. You may get something after that, but it's going to be spotty. And that's a problem. You put in a row of corn and you only get half of it to come up. That's a real mess. And so corn seed needs to be fresh. And so I wouldn't keep it for more than 2 years. This stuff will get used up this year. So, gotta get through the seed collection, find out what you do have, what you don't have, find out what's out of date, find out what you gotta dump. You don't necessarily have to throw it out. You know, seeds can be used as animal baits and things like this. They can be just thrown to the chickens if they're not treated. You know, you can also use them as cover crops. That way the germination's crummy. You just mix a whole bunch of different vegetable seed together and spread it into the garden as a cover crop. And when it comes up, it's got plenty of bush to it. You know, you destroy it and use it as a mulch or till it in for compost. That works too. Once we figure out what seed's good and what seed isn't good, then we have to figure out, well, what do we want to grow naturally? Of course, you know, the best thing to grow is always what you like to eat. That's a real simple one. Most of us have little experiments going on where we're trying something new, you know, or new varieties have come out we're unsure of, want to find out about purple tomatoes or, you know, whatever, chocolate peppers, things like this. You know, so you'll try out some new stuff. I always do. It's a lot of fun. Occasionally you get some real surprises by those trials. Get a brand new core variety out of them. But for the most part, we plant what we eat. You know, if you like green beans, well, my goodness, grow them. Tomatoes, most popular garden vegetable in North America. That's again one that most of us eat. So most of us plant. It's worth doing. Big family, want cheap carbs, man, go ahead and plant potatoes in most of the northern tier, you know, from Washington and Northern California straight across to the other seaboard in Maine down to New York and that. Anywhere through there where it's moist enough and the soil is, you know, slightly acid to acid, the potato thrives. So yeah, you want to have to figure out then, if I got a family of 6, how many pounds of potatoes will they eat in a year if you have a place to store them and so on. You know, these are other considerations too. They're a little out there, but, you know, what are you going to do with the produce too? That's something else to think about because you will have more than you need. So we calculate what seed we need, shop for brand new interesting seeds. We're going to go ahead and figure out how much seed we need for the amount of size of the crops we're trying to grow, whether they're market crops because you have to come to the farmer's market, or whether it's just for, you know, you and the kids and so on. The other considerations too in the planning is, you know, do you have a space ready for all of this? Hopefully you do. You've been gardening, and so you have a garden out back that hopefully is in tip-top shape, locked up for the winter, ready to rock and roll. Got a cover crop on it, or you piled a whole bunch of leaves over it, or some cool thing like that. You know, spread a horse stable out there, whatever you like to do. But hopefully it's not just sitting there, weeds and frozen mud. It beats not having the garden at all. But it's really not the best way to put it to sleep for fall. Maybe you don't have a garden plot yet. You know, maybe you got a spot in mind, so then you have to think about, well, you know, how are we going to establish that plot? You know, the sheet mulch technique is a really basic and simple way that people do that these days. You don't need a rototiller, you don't much have to use shovels, you know, pretty simple. You just mow down the grass somewhere or the weeds in a spot and cover it with post-consumer cardboard. Make sure the cardboard's pinned down to the ground. I like to use landscape staples, but all sorts of things will work. And then you bury it all in compost or wood chips. For a vegetable garden, I recommend compost. If you're going to plant, you know, a berry patch or some apple trees, well, then a sheet mulch made of wood chip mulch is fine for that. But in the vegetable garden, definitely get some good quality compost to cover that cardboard up with. That way you can work right into that stuff. Once it gets working, you can even set plants into the compost above the cardboard and they'll root through. If you're doing a sheet mulch this year, then it's probably going to be hard to grow some seeds in there unless they're really big, you know, because you don't have the ground opened up and there's a layer of cardboard under there and so on. So it's going to be best if you think in terms for your planning of things that will spread out from a central point where you only have to make a hole in the cardboard, set your plant, set a little fertilizer there, and then let the thing ramble all over the top of the sheet mulch for the summer. Squashes, cucumbers, melons do that. Many varieties of tomatoes, real good at spreading outward. You know, those are all top choices if you got a rough piece of ground. If you're not using a sheet mulch and you just flip the soil with a tiller or a plow or a shovel or whatever, but it's still, you know, full of hard roots and green grass and whatever, then, you know, think in terms of crops like corn. Corn's an excellent ground breaker. Well, that's what most of the farmers will use when they turn a pasture. Fresh breaking will go into corn first, you know. And so it's sweet corn, popcorn, whatever, great crops when your ground's really rough. A lot of other things, like a tomato's fine in rough ground. Generally peppers do okay in rough ground if there's enough nutrients around. But, you know, trying to sow carrot seeds, for instance, into a brand new plowing is not easy. You want more established ground for some crops. So you think of this sort of planning, you know, what am I going to do and why? If it's on the balcony in an apartment building in New York, well, it's going to be in, you know, buckets and tubs and so on. So you have to think in terms of, oh, maybe I need dwarf crops, you know, smaller things that work better in containers. There are special tomatoes for that, bush cucumbers and so on. Yeah, so think in terms of what makes sense. Also, you know, if I'm working in a container on a balcony, I like to see crops that are really fast turns, real fast turns. Things like lettuce, wham, 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 wham. Basil, cut it, come again, cut it, come again, you know. Real good stuff at a tub at a balcony. Snap beans on poles. Use bamboo poles at a tub with pole beans. Ooh, Vortex, my favorite. Ooh, I love Vortex on a pole bean. That's a great one. You got a huge yield in a little tub. I got a tub out front right now full of Vortex under the eave over here to keep it away from the rose beetles and so on. Yeah, it's looking great. So, you know, it's a very feasible thing to do. So it's basic planning, things you have to look at. Where's it going? What do you plant? How much do you plant? What did I have from last year? And so on. What do I like? And so on. But then there's those seed catalogs. Used to be it was all paper, and the paper ones still come. These days a lot of it's online. But it amounts to the same thing. I mean, I remember hours and hours of blizzards in the North Woods, paging through seed catalogs, imagining with faith in my heart that someday summer will return. And it was 40 degrees below zero outside, and the frost had come through the windows, but summer would come, I know it. It helps psychologically with that seasonally affected disorder. So let's take a look at some of the options when we're shopping and why we do it. So here on our computer, you will see we have Johnny Selected Seeds is up. One of my favorite seed companies. I love these guys. I've been with them since they first opened the doors, years ago, back in the early 70s, if I recall. It's one of the finest seed companies in the country, and luckily, this one has not yet been bought out lock, stock, and barrel by genetic engineering firms and huge multinational corporations. They are still employee-owned. Johnny gave away shares of the company to most of his best employees that have been with him some years back, and there it says right there, 100% employee-owned. So that's a cool thing. Now they do a lot of their own seed growing too, which is something I like. They also do supply organic seed. At one time, organic seed was all they sold, but basically it was a matter of how much organic seed is available and what kinds of crops can you get in organic seed. Johnny felt it was too limited and that he wanted to be able to introduce the brand new latest varieties along with old standards and other things that they were working on. And so he has split the catalog now. It's got both. So over here on the side I got a link that says brand new vegetables for 2018. Yep, and there they are. And this is where a lot of the real excitement comes in, I just love the new stuff. So many interesting things. Oh, unless of course it's Borrow the Beet. Beets. Boo. Max Pack Cucumber. Oh, there we go. Waldo PMR. That's an organic squash. It's a butternut. You'll see here as an OG, that means the seed is organic, whereas this one does not have it, so it isn't reading their code. This J means it's their original. They have developed this, and so it's their own stuff. Oh, got a brand new kohlrabi. Sure is pretty looking. Valentine, an organic tomato. Jade 2 green bean seed. Jade 1 was fabulous. I am assuming Jade 2 might even be improved, so that's a cool thing worth noting. So, we got all kinds of new and interesting things here. Got a brand new spinach, and so on. And so some of this is worth the trial, if you love spinach and you've been growing Thai or Melody or something for years and years, you might want to give Colibri, I guess that's it, a try. You might really find a new love. Otherwise, I'm a nut on the lettuce selections from Johnny's. Usually there's some really good stuff in their catalog. They like lettuce. And so I need to take a look and see, is there anything cool and new here? Cavendish. All right, Cavendish I'm not familiar with. This one here, that's an oak leaf lettuce, which does really well for me. And it's a very bright red one, so it's got a good color. This one. It's a French name. I don't know, I guess it's Panacea? I guess that's probably it. I don't know really how to pronounce it properly, but this lettuce, I see that, I guess this is one of Johnny's originals. This is a really, really wonderful form of an oak leaf. It's a salad bowl lettuce, if you're familiar with that, but it's much tighter, more compact. Salad bowl used to be very spread out, This one is really tight together and is almost head-like. Because of how compact it is. It's done so well for us here. I love this lettuce, and I'm running out of seed for it, so I need to get some more. Oh, here's one. This is old-time stuff, but if any of you folks have never grown a deer tongue lettuce. Deer tongue lettuce is really cool. It's kind of like a romaine in a way. It's sort of halfway between that and a butterhead. It's only one variety, deer tongue. I haven't grown it here in Hawaii yet. I'm not sure how we'll do with it, but I know in the Midwest and in California that was a good one. Okay, well, so sitting with your seed catalogs or your computer or your smartphone or tablet or whatever you like to use, it can really make a difference not only in how you're feeling about being housebound during the winter months. It also makes a big difference in how your garden next year comes out. It's also a time to assess. Do I have the materials I need? How's my fertilizer supply? Do I have proper compost? Are there any other sorts of materials like bean seed inoculants and things like this that you're going to need for a good successful season? Maybe even, do I have mushroom spawn? You want to spawn some mushrooms there in the garden too. The almond agaric, that's a real good choice where you got a well-composted garden. Real good mushroom, easy to grow. You might want to make arrangements to bring in some mushroom spawn. It's all going to benefit your garden anyway. So this is planting time. We're not working too hard at it. Even I'm inside today in paradise here because it's raining. And I was in the garden walking through the kale on the hill, and there was water running down the aisles. It's been raining that much, so even I'm sitting around planting. I definitely have to pick up more carrot seed. I need to get more lettuce seed, and I definitely need to go shopping for onions. I'm still experimenting with onions here to try to come up with the best variety. So, get down, find a chair, start making plans. Get out the notebook, get out the pencil. Maybe you got notes from last year. You want to bring them out, compare them, take a look, see what worked. If you're a note keeper, I tend to keep it all here, but a lot of people, they write stuff down like that. That's something else. And if you maybe making plans to start to write things down, if you haven't, it really helps, because unless you have a fabulous memory, remembering what you've done from year to year to year to year, maybe like if you're like me, I've been gardening for over 50 years, and I think I kind of remember most of it. But actually the truth is, if you ask me to pin down the name of the 450 different varieties of tomatoes that I've grown over the years, I couldn't do it. Probably if I saw the name again, I'd probably go, oh yeah, I used to grow Jetstar, or Santiam, or whatever it is. It may come back to me, but you definitely have a good body of knowledge if you're keeping notes on what flew and what didn't fly, what the weather was like, and so on too, because that'll affect it. So making plans. Aloha, hang loose, happy gardening.